Hello folks, this is Nancy with Paper Moon Tarot, and I am here to do a tag on tarot that kind of goes with my previous tag, which was tarot on the menu. So that was about dinner at different restaurants, different types of food, and this one is about movies, dinner and a movie. You know, makes sense. So this is tarot at the movies. And I hope a lot of you will respond with VRs to this because I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to go through, again, 7 categories as I did with the tarot on the menu. And they're different types of movies. And I'm going to talk about decks that the movies that type of movie reminds me of, as well as give you a sample movie from that category. They're not always my very favorite, but they're ones I could match up with a deck. I had to struggle a little bit to get the most contemporary ones because I haven't been to the movies in a year, and I feel a little out of it for the last year and a half. But I have movies of various vintages from 1939 to a couple of years ago. So in your VRs, I'd love to hear what movies you thought of for these different categories. Anyway, let's get going. The first category is romantic comedy, and this is the deck that's perfect for relationship readings. And for me, the deck that I chose goes with the movie that I chose, and the movie is La La Land from 2016. Lots of music and dancing and just very much an old-time musical feel where people will just break out in song at the oddest times. And it's about an actor and a musician and how they get together and how they fall apart. But the deck that I chose was the Tarot of Mystical Moments because I think it has a real feel of that fantasy romance. It's fun and funny in a lot of cases. Very quirky deck, very unusual images. So I can imagine people breaking into dance when I look at this card, just leaping in the air for no reason or for some reason. But I found that La La Land is kind of like this. So look at some of the images. I mean, they're not just quirky, they're very pretty. And so that reminded me of the romantic part of the comedy. And they're also kind of odd images. You know, she seems to have a house in her stomach. I really like this deck. It's very unusual. It's from US Games. And it goes along with the Oracle of Mystical Moments. So if you like using Oracle and Tarot, those two are a great combination. But just look at this woman floating on this globe, looking out at the horizon. It just gives me that feeling of romantic comedy, fantasy comedy, romance type stuff. So that's my romantic comedy deck and my romantic comedy movie. Okay, the next category, making a total shift, is horror. And this is the edge of your seat deck that gives you chills in a good way. You like that roller coaster feel of a horror movie, if you do. And the movie I chose was Crimson Peak, which is from 2015, and Del Toro is the director. And it's a very creepy movie where a woman, I don't know, it's the early 1900s maybe, and she's in Boston, she's an heiress, and she gets wooed by this guy who takes her home to his mansion in England, which is a horror in more ways than one. It's falling apart, but there are also some very disturbing things going on in it. So the deck that I chose to go with Crimson Peak is the Dark Mansions Tarot. I think it's perfect. If you've seen this movie, if you've seen The Mansion, you will understand this choice. This Dark Mansions Tarot is from a publisher in Poland, so I waited many months to get this deck, and it's just got a very odd sort of combination, almost Tim Burton-ish combination of cartoon and very strange things going on, very dark. Well, it's called Dark Mansion, so that makes sense. And I will have all of these decks with links to them and their creators down below if you're intrigued. But that looks very much the vintage of the movie, the guy in the top hat and the woman in the cape traveling in the boat. And it's a lovely deck. It's beautiful cardstock. That's very much the mood of the movie. So, this is my Dark Mansions horror movie to go along with Crimson Peak. Now, he's the director of Pan's Labyrinth and, you know, other horrible movies, horribly good movies. Okay, the next category is animated films. And this could be a card that brings to your mind a Disney or a Pixar or whatever movie that, that you really like. And the one that I chose is actually from 2009, so it's quite a while ago. But the name of the movie is Coraline. And I saw it in the theater, and it's about a little girl who goes into another dimension. She moves with her family into this mansion and finds a doorway and goes to another place that has another family that she thinks is much kinder to her and lets her do everything she wants, but they have an ulterior motive. This actually could have gone under animated horror because it's kind of spooky. But the deck that I chose to go with Coraline is the Nicoletta Ciccoli deck. I think it has that animated look, but also there's some weird things going on in this deck. This is not your normal world, it's a fantasy world, which is what Coraline goes into. And to me, it works perfectly with that animated movie. And that kind of looks like Coraline had been impaled on something to be shot at by people. I'm sure there's a scene like that in the movie where she's being chased. So this is the Nicoletta Ciccoli deck. I think it's a favorite of a lot of people. It's been around for several years, and it just has these fascinating images. When I was first learning tarot, it was a little hard to get the meaning out of the cards because it's, I believe, curated from the artwork. So they had to choose images that they felt would go with the tarot cards. And for most cases, they're really good choices, but they are so odd that it takes some thinking about them to really figure out what's going on. I love this lady with the dragon coming out of her dress. And I can just see the movie Coraline there. It's a good movie. It's fun. Okay, that was my animated category. So the next category was a challenge for me. It's action movies. The one that doesn't pull any punches. And you can think about a deck that's like that, where in readings it's always spot on but a little sharp in meaning. But in thinking about action movies, I struggled a little bit because I am not a fan of more recent action movies where there's a lot of blood and gore and killing and maiming and things like that. It just, yeah, don't like it. So I went back in time for this one to one that is considered a sci-fi action movie from 1993, and that is Jurassic Park. Lots of action in that one. It's definitely an action movie. And I chose to go with that movie a deck called The Lost Forest. And it is filled with very primeval sort of images. And in fact, a lot of dragony dinosaur-y type characters, because if you don't know Jurassic Park, where have you been? But Jurassic Park is about a millionaire who pays scientists to clone dinosaurs to create a theme park with live dinosaurs, but things go really wrong. As they do when we tamper with nature like that. But there's a lot of, obviously there's dinosaurs in the movie, and in this deck, there's a lot of, as I say, sort of primeval looking dinosaur, dragon type creatures. And so the Lost Forest just went perfectly with Jurassic Park in my mind. And I love the colors in this deck. It's very vibrant. The images aren't always the easiest to read for tarot. They're more, I think the artist has said, more a feeling, an impression, than being very literal in the symbolism. But that's a beautiful card. I love that one. I think that's Strength. Temperance. Okay, there's Temperance. It ought to be Strength. It's got a lion in it. But that's very sweet. And another odd creature, dinosaur-like creature. So again, that very forest primeval feel that to me goes along with Jurassic Park, which takes place in a jungle. Okay, that's The Lost Forest, and that is my action movie. Next category is Sci-Fi, a deck that's science or sci-fi related. And for me, that was the Quantum Tarot, and it's based on quantum physics, a lot of things to do with laws of physics, but it uses images from the Hubble telescope, so it's very sci-fi. The movie I chose to go with that was Arrival from 2016. It's Amy Adams stars in that one. And it's about a woman who's a linguist who is brought in to try to communicate with aliens coming to Earth. And it has sort of a time travel twist to it, or a time warp twist to it. But the Quantum Tarot, if you look at it, it's got these images, and I don't know if I can get this, but there's a, not on that one, but there's sort of a laminate quality to some of the images where they sort of have lines that have a certain effect on them. You can see it a little more on that one. You see those lines. But it's a very sort of cosmic, alien creatures. I don't know if these are all aliens, but you can get that sense of the science fiction, the sci-fi. And if you read the little guidebook that comes with it, it tells you which scientific theory or which concept from quantum physics applies to each card. So if you are at all interested in science, this is a fascinating deck to get. And again, I'm not getting, there you can see a little bit of that sort of laminated image there. But very much a sci-fi cosmic sort of deck. And the images are quite beautiful. The cards are really well done. I think it's by US Games. And I think it goes really well with the movie Arrival and the whole sci-fi category. Now you can see a little bit of that, how part of that is laminated, with a glow to it. But the light changes around here so often, I can't always get it. Anyway, you can see the scientific formulas appear on the cards quite often, as well as constellations. And so there's my science sci-fi deck. The next category is fantasy, the cards that take you to another world. And for this, I really went back in time for a movie. I know there are some great fantasy movies more recently, but I decided on The Wizard of Oz from 1939. And I don't know if you know your movie history, but 1939 was a hell of a year. Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. I think it might have even been Casablanca. Anyway, some great classic films went up against each other. And my impression is The Wizard of Oz did not, although it went up for an Academy Award, I think. I should have researched this. It was not that popular when it first came out. It really caught on when it went on TV, maybe in the 60s, and became very popular from that. So anyway, in The Wizard of Oz, there is a character in the Kansas part, and I'm assuming you all know this story, in the Kansas part where Dorothy is at home, and she runs into a man with a caravan who's a carny man. He's a fortune teller. He's probably a flim-flam man. And when she gets to Oz, he becomes the Wizard of Oz. So I decided to go off of his carny background, Carnival, and I chose the deck, the 78 Tarot Carnival. Now, 78 Tarot is a series of decks. They bring out one a year, I believe, with 78 different artists. And they all do a take on a certain theme. This year it was Carnival, this particular year. They've done nautical and astronomical or astrology, and anyway, space, and environmental and mythological, I think various themes each year. But this one was Carnival. And so I picked these cards to go with fantasy and another world, because I think the carnival world, the world of people who work in carnivals, is very unique from what most of us know. So besides offering us a sort of fantasy vision, it is its own world, its own environment. So this is a beautiful deck, and I don't even know if it's still available. They do a limited edition run, and this one is a couple years old maybe, for the 78 Carnival. But the artwork, of course, is just beautiful. Not consistent because it's 78 different artists, but really, really nice. I was thinking for The Wizard of Oz that this one reminds me of the lion because he wants to find a heart. And this lady has a whole selection of hearts on her balloons. But I think this is a great fantasy deck. Again, I think carnivals offer us a world of fantasy, as do the movies in general. And that one is just stunning. Okay, so that's my fantasy category for the movies. And there's one more, which is foreign film. And for this, I am going to dig way back in time to 1966. This was a film that actually was before my time. When it was very popular in the 60s, there were movie theaters, like there's one in Massachusetts in Harvard Square, that played this movie for 3 years straight. It was such a cult classic. I came a little after that. I wasn't, in college in the 60s or anything. So, but it was still a popular cult movie when I kind of got into college. And it just is a very beautiful French movie. And it's very, very sweet, but it has a strong anti-war message that I guess in the 60s really hit home with a lot of people. The movie is The King of Hearts, and it is French, Le Roi de Coeur, something like that, The King of Hearts. And it has some English-speaking actors, Geneviève Bujold, who is Canadian, and I think Alan Arkin. Anyway, I think I'm getting that wrong. But anyway, it's got some British, Canadian actors, but also a lot of French people. King of Hearts takes place in a French village, and a Scottish battalion is just outside of town, and it's a town that the Germans invaded, and the Germans have left, the townspeople fled, so the Scottish battalion sends a scout ahead to check out whether all the Germans are gone and it's clear for them to come in town. So through a variety of plot devices, he ends up discovering the people in, there's nobody in town except in the mental institution, the insane asylum. And he wanders in there and they declare him King of France. And they all exit the asylum. There's nobody else around. They take over the town. They are having a wonderful time. One man declares himself the mayor of the town, and his girlfriend, his wife, and the mayoress, and another girl puts on a ballerina costume because she's always wanted to be a dancer. So it's a very fantastical environment where you see all these people liberated from their bonds and having a ball, having a wonderful time. Now, they're in contrast to the armies on either side of the town who are going to eventually destroy each other, and we're meant to consider who's really crazy here. The people fighting this war, or the people who are just wandering around town having a wonderful time with their own fantasies, their own fantasy minds. Anyway, the deck I chose to go with it is the Lily White. It's a French deck, so it goes along with that. And it's a very light, pretty, happy deck. Beautiful colors. And it just makes me think of that movie, The King of Hearts, and think of the lighter side of life. Certainly not war and destruction. Look how pretty those are. Really pretty cards, and I love the backs of the Lily White. Let's try and get that so you can see it. And it's a deck that it has some animal images, but it also has people, has some Marseille-like images like this one. But it's not a Marseille deck, it's not a Pip deck. So the light, bright colors and images, isn't that a great Ace of Pentacles? So that is my movie and my deck for foreign film. And those are the 7 categories. And I would love it if you did a VR to this. If you liked it, then please like the video. Please put comments down below about your favorite movies. And if you can think of a deck and a movie that would just be perfect together, I'd love to hear your comments. And thank you to those of you who subscribe. And you take care and go out and have dinner and a movie. Enjoy. Well, inside, but enjoy.